an underrated technique, or at least an underrated part of the music making process. Sound mixing is essential to make or break a song. From giving it dynamics to exploring the soundscape in 3D and even balancing all the sound levels, the work done by a great sound mixer is not to be underestimated. It can elevate songs to greatness. Following a couple of CDs I've recently reviewed that had sound mixing issues, some of those quite unexpected coming from professional mixers, I've decided to create this episode to share some of my knowledge about what makes a Seiyuu artist or 2D group sound good, which is essentially a great sound mix. Let's kick off this episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Welcome to Seiyuu Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is sound mixing, the difference between a good or a bad Seiyuu or 2D song. This is something I geek a lot about, like a lot, especially on all the reviews I write. I was a DJ for some time, and when time allows it, I still compose music for my own entertainment. And of course, if you know the work I do at the Hand That Feeds HQ, you know that I've reviewed over 900 CDs and that my reviews can be extremely technical at times. That's because I geek about composition and I want to dive deeper and deeper to the point of being able to replicate what I just heard should I want to compose something. All this to say that I know the pain and fascination that comes with creating a sound mix that makes you excited about your music. More than having the perfect sound or vocals, if you have an awesome mix, you can make certain things shine. You get to give a different life to the music you already have created. I can assure you, you give a demo or a multi-track session that wasn't polished for a sound mixer to fix, and each mixer will come up with a different interpretation of the music, even if your instructions are the same. This is the beauty of sound mixing, but also a good reason why mixing for some male Seiyuu artists and 2D groups doesn't work as well as you'd want to. The same instructions, feelings or messages can be understood in different ways and conveyed in different ways and give way to completely different sound mixes. Mixes can also vary in quality for a wide variety of reasons. Bad quality of the original recordings, premix made by someone other than the mixer, concepts, singers that do not know how to sing, or even orders in case of 2D music of how the songs have to really sound like, giving little freedom for the sound mixer to interpret those and give their own twist. But let's start with the basics. After all, I want you to, when I wrap up this episode, to know how to spot bad mixes and understand and appreciate the little details that a good mix brings to the spotlight. What is mixing and what does a sound mixer do? Simply put, sound mixing is all about balance. I said simply put, but creating balance within a song is not easy. That's why there are sound mixers working with your favorite Seiyuu artists instead of the composer or arranger also being a mixer. It can happen, however, you want someone specialized in mixing to do the job even better. Mixing can elevate the quality of songs. Mixing can completely change the tone of a song. So mixing involves combining all the sounds, instruments and vocals received from the multi-track recording they are working on and make those shine, or even make sense of those to everyone involved. With that multi-track in hand, the mixer has the job of balancing all those recordings in sensible sound levels, making some elements stand out, being louder than others, and putting other elements in the background to add depth to the song. But there is more to what a sound mixer does. A mixer will balance those sounds in terms of panning, which is to say, placing them in the stereo field, left, center, right, and anywhere in between. At the same time, a sound mixer will also balance frequencies, brightening some sounds, darkening others, taking some frequencies away, and using depth as another balance tool to give the listener a sense of closeness or distance of a sound in a soundscape. This is what will make you say that you feel like the drums are behind you, the guitars are on your left ear, or the bass is far in front of you. What are the 8 ingredients for a perfect sound mix? If you've read some of my reviews on the website or even watched any of the videos on the YouTube channel for the review Advent Calendar episodes, you'll quickly notice I often mention these. In my opinion, you need balance. This is essential. When you are listening to the song, the mix should offer a good balance of the levels of each instrument, vocal, details in the background, or even other things. But at the same time, as a mixer, you will want to have that balance without the song sounding way too perfect, even too robot-like, which would mean the song losing its musicality and emotion. Is that easy to achieve? For newcomer mixers, probably not, but with experience, balance comes off as something natural. Clarity. Many of the bad mixes I've heard into the music or even Seiyuu music tend to be incredibly flawed when it comes to clarity. Murky instrumentals in which you only listen to some noise but can't really pick up any instrument with ease from the composition, or even vocals completely overlapped by the instrumentals. These are common errors found into the music. A good example of lack of clarity is Grove's Night Quartet, in which you can't really understand with clarity part of the vocals, and the instrumental ends up being quite murky in some sections. With that being said, and being a bit more technical, as a mixer you want to properly represent the entire frequency range, knowing that it is huge. You have lows, midtones and highs. You want it all of those to be present, balanced and clear as day. Lows are powerful, highs sparkle, the midtones keep the song grounded. Panning. Another issue you will find in Grove's Night Quartet is in the panning of the vocals. The vocals are not dead center, which would be even weirder, but are fairly bunched up at center, not exploring the soundscape, thus lacking any depth. So as a mixer, you will want every single element of the song placed within the soundscape in a way that makes sense within the song, as well as makes sense to the artist and the listener. With that being said, panning refers to the placement of sounds in the stereo field or the soundscape, populating those between the left and right, back and front, basically everywhere in the soundscape. To populate the soundscape, the mixer will work in surround or stereo. Stereo is the most common for music. Separation. Separation goes hand in hand with clarity. After all, in the mix, each instrument and part should be easy to pick apart. If the common listener can pick out individual sounds within a song, it has good separation. Space. I often talk about the soundscape, ambient sounds, ambient synths, and the sort. Well, these are all connected to the concept of space in music. Within a song, there are various elements. Depending on the song, it can have 10 or 100 different elements going on in one mix. The sound mixer's job is to make sure that the overall mix has a sense of ambience. You don't want to listen to all those 10 or 100 elements all at the same time, flat in front of you, right? You want to feel like you are in a studio, within a wide soundscape, in a cozy or perhaps even intimate situation. Well, for that to happen, the mixer has to do something about having all the sound and vocals occupying the space in a way that you will feel you are in a three-dimensional space. Do note that having sound within a three-dimensional space is completely different from recording sound with a binaural microphone, which records per default in 3D. When I mention three-dimensional sound, is that within its flatness, due to having been recorded with stereo microphones that do not record in 3D, the sounds and voice were rearranged within that soundscape to give you a feel of the drums being far away from you, the bass line right behind you, and the vocals panning during the performance. A Seiyuu artist that does this really well is Kotaro Nishiyama. Most of his songs have a lot of space and give you a truly 3D sound, with the final touch being the panning vocals with proximity mimicking that of a dummy head mic. Just for a good example. Dynamics. Dynamics within a song are essential. A perfect mix allows all parts of the song to be themselves, to shine, breathe, and develop. For that to happen, every single element within the song shouldn't be overly compressed or too loud to the point of stealing the show and making all other instruments just a murky mess. Creativity. This is of course obvious. If you have a good composer, a fantastic singer, and awesome musicians, you want a creative mixer that thinks outside of the box in order to elevate the quality of the music you produced and the vocals you recorded. With that being said, a great mix will not only deliver a clear and balanced representation of all the elements within the song, but also will put the focus on the right things to make the listener think, even start to theorize about why a specific detail within the song was highlighted. A Seiyuu artist that does this extremely well is Soma Saito. The mixes for his songs always focus on highlighting specific details within the soundscape. Those details will, on a first listen, not mean much, but the more you focus on those, the more you start understanding what the artist intended to get across to you. A good mixer is essential to make the artist's messages come across more clearly, even if that is done subtly. Freedom. This is something that goes hand in hand with creativity. If the sound mixer has creativity to take a song through an unpredictable yet unexpectedly good path, why can't they? With freedom, however, never disregarding the message the singer wants to deliver to the listener, a sound mixer can create something that no one else thought when composing, singing, or arranging the song. With freedom, a good sound mixer can create memorable experiences for the listener. However, this is an ingredient that can raise some questions. If given complete freedom, can't the sound mixer create a song that is really far from what the artist wanted? They can. However, the artist and the music label representative will have to listen to the song or the album in which that song is before giving it the okay to be shipped for production. So a bad mix can be stopped before heading for production and thus distribution. How did that not happen for some of the bad mixes I mentioned earlier? Perhaps the representatives did not care about taking a listen. Perhaps the song was intended to sound murky. Perhaps the song or songs were showcased in poor headphones or studio monitors that somehow hid the bad elements about a mix. There are a multitude of reasons, some of those no one will ever know, why a bad mix is approved for distribution. What you don't want in a mix. This is quite simple. You do not want lack of clarity, perfection in a mix, sound levels all over the place, and lack of panning. When I mention that you do not want perfection in a mix, I mean that most music is composed in a digital audio workstation. By default, music composed using these DAWs will sound too perfect. The tempo is right on perfect. Vocals are pitch perfect. The instrumentals sound way too robotic. When the focus is way too much on perfection, you end up with songs that sound exactly the same or have the same feel, most of those lacking any emotion, sounding quite woody. This happens to a wide variety of 2D idol music projects, especially those that are EDM-centric. There is barely any difference in the sound of most groups, something that attests to that perfection that you do not want in your music. You still want some natural mistakes. Please put air quotes on mistakes, because those natural mistakes I'm talking about are the natural things you listen when an artist performs live. That's the sound of the fingers sliding down the guitar, a more intense pluck of the strings on a bass, breathing on the vocals, a snare that was hit with a bit more strength than it needed. To some degree, you want those in your recording. If you remove those, and the song has a fairly common composition, your mixing will make the song sound generic. What are the common mistakes in Seiyuu artists and 2D groups' music? Wanting to cram as many things as possible within the same composition just to sound cool and trendy, sound levels all over the place for the instrumentals, buried vocals due to poor mixing, bad vocals having to be hidden by a loud mixing. The list goes on, but those are the most common mistakes. Growth's Night Quartet is a good example of a song with a fantastic instrumental, well balanced as a standalone, but with an overall mixing that is all over the place, burying the vocals. It suffers as well from lack of depth, space and clarity, which are all bad things to find in a final product. Those are the type of mistakes in a mix that are fixed prior to getting the okay to distribute the song. Tokyo Color Sonic's Begin on Buddy is a bit more subtle in the weird mixing going on. During the chorus, vocals and the instrumental are exactly at the same sound levels, which ends up with 4 outstanding vocalists completely buried in the mix. Lack of clarity and unbalanced sound levels are the big issues in here. On a live setting, due to the awful mix, the voice actors opted for not singing at the same time that chorus, instead doing the background pitch vocals. Is this a sign the mixing was bad? Oh hell yes. They knew that if they performed that part at the same time live, when the mixing is slightly harder to do, that no one would be clear. It would be an absolute mess. B Project's So Say Prelude and Roar are 2 other examples of bad vocals mixing. Each song features 7 vocals and both songs have a massive bass line driving them. So Say Prelude has a good instrumental, but the vocals are barely audible even on high-res headphones. Roar is as murky and messy as it gets, because not only are the vocals in the background, but those are not clean. Add to that a deep bass-driven instrumental and the vocals are buried. B Project's mixers managed to make Toshiyuki Toyonaga, Kazuki Kato, Shoya Chiba and Natsuki Hanae sound bad. Now, that's a talent, a weird one, but a talent by the sound mixer. Trying to sound trendy and cool basically made 2 songs barely audible, and some of the best singers among male Seiyuu sound like they lack power or any technique to begin with. Venomous 8's Welcome to the Deadlight City goes down the same rabbit hole. The focus on the mixing was on showcasing how allegedly cool the instrumental was, that midway through the vocals were nowhere to be found. There was no emotion, no excitement. Out of the 4 vocals, only Kentito had the spotlight while everyone else was shoved to the background in the verses and put in a weird unison in the chorus parts. All this to say, sound mixers are important. Sound mixers can turn a good song into an epic song that will leave you with the mouth ajar. They can turn a mediocre song into a genuinely good song. They give life to songs, to the artist's feelings. Sound mixers literally ruined every single one of those songs I just mentioned. Be it due to inexperience, lack of attention, awful deadlines, ridiculous instructions, lack of focus by the producers on what they want to achieve or highlight within a song, or even the inability for some Seiyuu to sing well. Truth is, those sound mixes were a mess from start to finish. And you notice how the vocals can all of a sudden sound bad. How come Toshiyuki Toyonaga sounds bad as a singer? Well, for that specific B project song, the sound mixer achieved the ultimate thing. Make the best and most technical singer among male Seiyuu sound like he didn't know what he was doing. So to return to what I wanted to say, sound mixers are important. Choosing one with a good track record of great mixes, with some sensibility or passion for the music genre they are mixing, makes a difference. Also, it is a responsibility from the creators of 2D music projects or Seiyuu artist producers to make sure they have their objectives for each song well defined. If an artist wants to have a somber tone to go alongside somber lyrics, the mixing should highlight that. If it is an EDM song for a group with 10 members, each member must be clear at all times, and the instrumental shouldn't bury the vocals no matter how intense and trendy it is. If an artist wants simplicity in the song to contrast with complexity in the vocals, so be it. These are guidelines that can be set in order to avoid weird final mixes. Once again, a sound mix can make or break a song. A sound mix can make a good singer sound bad and a bad singer sound great. A sound mixer is just as important as the seiyuu hired to perform the songs. After all, sound mixers give life to stories and soundscapes through their interpretation of all the sounds and vocals they have in hand to mix into a song. Sound mixing is something really dear to me. Although I don't do it for music as much as I wanted, I still do this for the podcast. If you notice, the music bed is really that, the background to this podcast. The vocals have to be at front and, in this case, since we're talking about a podcast, at center. The vocals should be warm instead of brassy and hard to listen to. The stings between parts can have a louder sound level to make sure everyone is listening, or that everyone that is listening will turn their focus to the episode. There are details that a sound mixer has to have into attention. This is my regular experience as a sound mixer and engineer for this podcast, but everything I just said and even what I said in the rest of the episode result of my experience mixing music and studying the art of mixing are the basics, to-dos and don'ts. I hope that in a way this episode will make you better appreciate the music you listen to and understand why some songs have bad reviews despite sounding okay to common ears, and why bad songs will or may have good reviews once again due to the quality of its mixes. Mixing is more than just playing with some knobs. It's all about giving life to a song. Now tell me, are you the type of person to pay attention to the mixing of your favorite male seiyuu or 2D group songs? What do you think is the most important element to have in a good mix? Let me know in the comments on YouTube, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of Seiyuu Lounge. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the hand that feeds HQ's weekly male seiyuu and music-related content. I'll return next week with another episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Thank you for listening and see you guys around.